There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether they will continue living by the story the world gave them, or finally create a new one for themselves. Most people are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by identity. They wake up every day repeating the same thoughts, carrying the same fears, expecting the same disappointments, and then wondering why life never changes. But your life can never rise higher than the story you keep telling yourself about who you are. If you believe you are broken, life will mirror brokenness. If you believe you are limited, opportunities will seem distant. But the moment you begin to see yourself differently, think differently, and feel differently about yourself, your entire reality begins to shift. Because the greatest transformation in life does not begin on the outside, it begins within. Today, I want you to understand one powerful truth. You are not defined by your past, your failures, your fears, or the opinions of others. You are defined by the identity you choose to accept today. So if you are ready to step into a greater version of yourself, then this message is for you. Because everything changes the moment you start telling yourself a different story about who you are. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their circumstances without ever realizing that circumstances are only reflections of identity. They focus on changing the outside world while continuing to carry the same beliefs, fears, and assumptions within themselves. But life does not respond primarily to what you want. Life responds to who you believe you are. Your identity silently shapes your choices, your expectations, your emotions, and your reactions. In many ways, your identity acts like an invisible force directing the entire course of your life. If a person deeply believes they are unworthy of success, they may work hard, but somewhere within, they will expect failure. They will hesitate when opportunities appear. They will doubt themselves at the very moment they should move forward with confidence. Even if success comes close, their inner beliefs may push it away because internally they do not feel aligned with it. On the other hand, someone who believes they are capable, deserving, and valuable moves through life differently. They take action with confidence. They recover from setbacks faster. They expect good things to happen. And because of this inner expectation, they begin attracting experiences that match their identity. The world constantly mirrors the image you hold of yourself. This is why two people can face the same situation and experience completely different outcomes. One person sees obstacles everywhere because internally they identify with struggle. The other sees opportunity because internally they identify with growth and possibility. The external world may look similar, but the internal story changes everything. Many people unknowingly build identities based on painful experiences from the past. A failed relationship becomes, I am unlovable. A financial struggle becomes, I will always be broke. A mistake becomes, I am a failure. Over time, these thoughts stop feeling like temporary emotions and begin feeling like facts. But the truth is that experiences do not define identity unless you continue emotionally attaching yourself to them. A moment of failure does not make you a failure. A season of struggle does not mean struggle is your destiny. The danger is that once an identity is accepted, the mind begins searching for evidence to support it. If you believe you are unlucky, you will notice every disappointment and ignore every blessing. If you believe nobody values you, you will focus only on rejection while overlooking love and appreciation. The mind always seeks to confirm what it already believes. That is why changing your life requires changing your self-concept first. You cannot consistently create a life that contradicts your identity. If deep inside you feel powerless, it becomes difficult to create a powerful life. If you secretly feel undeserving, abundance may feel uncomfortable to you. Your subconscious mind always tries to keep your external world aligned with your internal beliefs. This is why temporary motivation often fades. People may feel inspired for a moment, but if their identity remains unchanged, they eventually return to old patterns. Real transformation happens when you begin changing the way you see yourself. Not just your actions, but your inner definition of who you are. The moment you stop identifying as someone who is defeated and begin identifying as someone who is growing, strong, and capable, your entire mindset begins shifting. Your energy changes, your decisions change, your reactions change, and gradually your reality changes too. You must learn to stop speaking negatively about yourself. Every time you say, I can't do this, I'm always unlucky, or nothing works for me, you reinforce a weak identity within your subconscious mind. Words are powerful because they shape belief, and belief shapes reality. The conversations you have with yourself every day are quietly creating the foundation of your future. Instead of repeating limitation, begin affirming a higher identity. Tell yourself, I am becoming stronger every day. I am worthy of success. I attract opportunities. I am confident. I am capable of creating a better life. At first, these thoughts may feel unfamiliar because the old identity has been practiced for years. But repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity eventually becomes belief. One of the most powerful things you can do is begin imagining yourself as the person you desire to become. See yourself succeeding. See yourself living with confidence and peace. Feel the emotions of that version of yourself now before external evidence appears. When you emotionally connect with a greater identity internally, you begin aligning your actions and energy with that future. The world cannot consistently deny someone who truly changes within. External reality eventually adjusts to match internal transformation. This does not mean challenges disappear overnight, but it means you stop approaching life as the same person. And when you are no longer the same person internally, different outcomes become possible externally. Your identity is not something fixed forever. It is something you can consciously reshape. Every day, you are either reinforcing an old story or creating a new one. You are either feeding fear or feeding confidence. You are either identifying with limitation or identifying with possibility. So ask yourself honestly, who have you been telling yourself you are? And more importantly, who do you now choose to become? Because the life you experience tomorrow will be deeply connected to the identity you accept today. Every human being lives inside a story. Long before circumstances appear in the outer world, they are first formed within the mind through repeated thoughts, emotions, and assumptions. The story you repeat to yourself every single day eventually becomes the reality you experience. Whether you realize it or not, your inner conversations are shaping your future. The words you continuously speak within yourself are not harmless thoughts drifting through the mind. They are instructions. They are seeds. And over time, they grow into the experiences, relationships, opportunities, and conditions that surround your life. Most people do not consciously choose their inner story. Instead, they inherit it from past experiences, disappointments, fears, and the opinions of others. Someone fails once and begins saying, nothing ever works out for me. Someone experiences rejection and starts repeating, I am not good enough. Another person struggles financially and keeps declaring, I will always live this way. At first, these may seem like emotional reactions to difficult moments, but repetition transforms temporary feelings into permanent beliefs. The mind learns through repetition. Whatever you continuously repeat with feeling begins to feel natural and true. This is why negative thinking can become so powerful. If a person spends years telling themselves they are unlucky, They eventually stop questioning it. They begin expecting failure even before trying. They move through life carrying invisible limitations created by their own inner narrative. The story becomes so familiar that it starts shaping every decision they make. But here is the truth many people never realize. Your mind does not always distinguish between objective reality and repeated belief. If you continue impressing a thought upon yourself emotionally and consistently, the subconscious mind accepts it as truth. Once accepted, it begins influencing your behaviors, reactions, expectations, and perceptions in ways that quietly shape your life experience. Imagine someone who constantly says, "People always disappoint me." Without realizing it, they may approach relationships with fear, suspicion, or emotional distance. Their expectations influence how they communicate and interpret situations. Over time, their experiences begin reflecting the very story they kept repeating. Not because life is punishing them, but because their internal assumptions are influencing their external reality. This is why changing your life requires changing your inner dialogue. You cannot continuously repeat stories of fear, limitation, and defeat while expecting a life of confidence, abundance, and peace. The outer world eventually reflects the dominant story you emotionally identify with inside. Many people wait for life to change before they change their thinking. They say, "When success comes, then I'll believe in myself. When money arrives, then I'll feel secure. When love appears, then I'll feel worthy." But transformation does not happen in that order. First, the story changes within. Then reality begins adjusting around it. You must begin telling yourself a new story before evidence appears. You must dare to speak differently about yourself, even if the current circumstances do not yet match your vision. This is where true inner power begins. When you stop allowing the past to narrate your future and consciously choose a new identity, your entire direction starts changing. If you constantly repeat thoughts of struggle, struggle becomes emotionally familiar. But if you begin repeating thoughts of confidence, growth, success, peace, and abundance, your mind gradually becomes aligned with those realities instead. The subconscious mind responds to consistency. Whatever story is repeated most often with emotional conviction becomes dominant. This is why you must protect your inner conversations carefully. Stop speaking against your own future. Stop rehearsing failure in your imagination. Stop constantly repeating everything that went wrong. Every time you relive pain emotionally, you strengthen its influence over your identity. Instead, begin rehearsing the life you desire. Speak as if growth is already unfolding. Think from possibility instead of fear. Tell yourself, "I am becoming stronger. New opportunities are entering my life. I deserve happiness and success. My future can be greater than my past." These are not empty words when repeated with belief and feeling. They become the foundation of a new self-concept. And a new self-concept eventually produces a new reality. The story you tell yourself also affects your emotional state. A person constantly repeating fearful thoughts will naturally feel anxious and discouraged. But a person repeating empowering thoughts begins feeling hopeful, motivated, and confident. Emotions influence actions, and actions influence results. Everything is connected to the inner narrative you choose to entertain daily. You must also understand that the mind moves toward what feels familiar. If struggle has become familiar emotionally, success may initially feel uncomfortable or unrealistic. That is why repetition is so important. The more you repeat a new story, the more natural it begins to feel. Eventually, the once unfamiliar identity becomes your new normal. Never underestimate the power of what you repeatedly say to yourself in silence. Your inner speech is quietly shaping your future experiences every day. The life you live tomorrow is deeply connected to the thoughts you consistently entertain today. So stop repeating stories that weaken you. Stop identifying with fear, failure, rejection, and limitation. Those stories do not have to define your future unless you continue giving them life through repetition. Begin telling yourself a greater story now. A story filled with strength, possibility, purpose, confidence, and transformation. Because in the end, the story you repeat most often is the story your life eventually becomes. One of the greatest reasons people remain stuck in life is because they continue identifying with moments that were never meant to define them. A failure happens, and instead of seeing it as an experience, they turn it into an identity. A disappointment occurs, and they begin carrying it like a permanent label. Over time, they stop saying, I failed, and start saying, I am a failure. That small shift changes everything because what you identify with emotionally begins shaping the direction of your entire life. The past has a powerful influence only when you keep reliving it in your mind. Many people are no longer suffering because of what happened years ago. They are suffering because they keep replaying the same story every day. The memory becomes active again and again through thought, emotion, and imagination. In this way, the mind continues experiencing old pain as if it is still happening in the present moment. You must understand that failure is an event, not an identity. Every successful person has faced setbacks, rejection, mistakes, delays, and moments of uncertainty. But the difference is that they refuse to build their identity around temporary circumstances. They understood that one difficult chapter could not determine the meaning of their entire life. When you continue identifying with old failures, you unconsciously limit your future possibilities. A person who constantly remembers past rejection may stop opening their heart to new relationships. Someone who failed financially may become afraid to pursue opportunities again. A person who once lost confidence may begin expecting disappointment in every situation. In each case, the past begins controlling the future because the individual never emotionally released the old identity. The mind always moves in the direction of dominant belief. If you repeatedly remind yourself of your mistakes, your subconscious mind continues accepting weakness, fear, and limitation as part of who you are. Then, even when opportunities appear, self-doubt rises automatically. You hesitate, you overthink, you expect things to go wrong because internally you are still carrying the emotional memory of failure. This is why you must stop worshipping the past. Stop giving old pain authority over your future. The past may have shaped certain experiences, but it does not have the power to define who you become unless you continue agreeing with it. You are not meant to spend your life imprisoned by old versions of yourself. Many people unknowingly keep their past alive through their daily language. They say things like, I've always struggled. Nothing ever works for me. I'm just not good enough. Or, this is how my life has always been. Every time these words are repeated, the old identity becomes stronger. The subconscious mind listens carefully to repeated statements, especially when emotion is attached to them. You cannot move into a new future while emotionally clinging to an old self concept. If you want transformation, you must begin seeing yourself differently now, not someday in the future. You must stop introducing yourself to life through your wounds and disappointments. The moment you decide that your past failures no longer define you, your energy begins changing immediately. There is a powerful difference between learning from the past and living inside the past. Wisdom from past experiences can help you grow, but emotional attachment to failure only weakens you. Learn the lesson, but release the identity. Take the growth, but leave behind the self-condemnation. Your mistakes were never meant to become your permanent identity. You must begin mentally rehearsing a new version of yourself. Instead of replaying moments of embarrassment, defeat, or regret, start imagining yourself succeeding, overcoming, growing, and thriving. The imagination is powerful because whatever you repeatedly picture, with feeling begins influencing your subconscious mind. If you constantly imagine failure, you prepare yourself emotionally for limitation. But if you begin imagining success, confidence, and victory, your inner world gradually starts aligning with those possibilities. Forgiving yourself is also an important part of transformation. Many people remain trapped not because life refuses to move forward, but because they refuse to release themselves from guilt and regret. They secretly punish themselves for old mistakes and carry emotional burdens long after the situation has ended. But true growth begins when you decide that your future matters more than your former identity. You are not the same person you were years ago. Every day brings an opportunity to think differently, believe differently, and become different. Human beings are constantly evolving, yet many people remain emotionally loyal to an outdated version of themselves. They continue carrying labels that no longer belong to them. The moment you stop identifying with failure, you create space for transformation. Confidence begins growing, hope begins returning. Possibilities that once felt distant suddenly seem attainable. Why? Because your inner identity is no longer chained to defeat. Life responds differently when you no longer see yourself as broken. Opportunities appear differently when you no longer expect disappointment. Relationships improve when you stop carrying the assumption that you are unworthy. Everything begins shifting when your self concept changes. So stop looking at your past as proof that your future cannot improve. Your past was a chapter, not the conclusion. Your failures were experiences, not definitions. You have the power to choose a new identity today. And the moment you truly release the old story, you make room for a completely new life to begin. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that transformation only happens after circumstances change. They think they will finally feel confident when success arrives, feel peaceful when problems disappear, or feel worthy when others approve of them. But true transformation does not begin on the outside. It begins within. The person you become internally determines the experiences you eventually create externally. That is why you must learn to feel like the version of yourself you desire to become before physical evidence appears. Most people live emotionally attached to their current circumstances. If they experience lack, they feel powerless. If they experience rejection, they feel unworthy. If they experience delays, they feel discouraged. Their emotions constantly rise and fall according to external conditions. But the person who truly transforms understands something powerful. Emotions are not only reactions to life, they are also creative forces shaping life itself. The feelings you repeatedly entertain become part of your identity. If you constantly feel fear, worry, frustration, and limitation, those emotions begin influencing your thoughts, decisions, behaviors, and expectations. Eventually, life starts reflecting the emotional state you most frequently occupy. But when you consciously begin cultivating feelings of confidence, peace, gratitude, abundance, and certainty, your inner world begins changing. And once the inner world changes, the outer world eventually follows. This is why you cannot wait for the future before emotionally becoming the person you wish to be. If you want to experience success, you must begin feeling worthy of success now. If you desire love, you must begin feeling lovable now. If you seek peace, you must stop emotionally living in fear and begin choosing calmness within yourself. Everything starts with identity and feeling. Two people can repeat the same positive words, but the one who emotionally believes and feels those words deeply will experience greater transformation. The subconscious mind responds strongly to emotion because feelings impress ideas more deeply into the inner mind. What you feel consistently becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar eventually feels natural and real. Many people unknowingly rehearse negative emotions every day. They wake up remembering problems. They replay disappointments repeatedly in their imagination. They expect frustration before the day even begins. Over time, these emotional habits become deeply rooted. The mind and body become conditioned to live in stress, doubt, and discouragement. Then people wonder why life continues bringing similar experiences. But imagine what happens when you begin emotionally rehearsing a new reality instead. Imagine waking up and feeling gratitude before any evidence appears. Imagine carrying confidence before achievement arrives. Imagine feeling secure before circumstances improve. This inner shift changes your entire energy. Your posture changes. Your decisions change. Your reactions change. You begin moving through life differently because internally you no longer identify with lack and limitation. Feeling the version of yourself you want to become does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It means refusing to let temporary circumstances define your emotional identity. It means understanding that the outer world is often delayed compared to the inner world. Seeds planted in the mind and emotions require time to appear physically. But if you remain faithful to the new feeling, change eventually unfolds. The imagination plays an important role in this process. When you vividly imagine yourself living the life you desire, your mind and emotions begin responding to those images. If you imagine yourself healthy, confident, successful, peaceful, or fulfilled with emotional intensity, your subconscious mind starts accepting those experiences as possible and natural. The body often responds emotionally to imagined experiences almost as strongly as real ones. This is why visualization combined with feeling can become so powerful. You must stop emotionally identifying with the person you no longer want to be. Too many people keep returning mentally and emotionally to old identities. They say they want a new life, but internally they continue feeling like the same fearful, defeated, insecure person. Transformation cannot fully happen this way. You must emotionally detach from the old version of yourself and begin embodying the new one. Ask yourself, how would the confident version of you think? How would the peaceful version of you feel? How would the successful version of you walk, speak, and respond to life? Begin practicing those emotions now. Do not wait for permission from circumstances. The emotional shift must come first. At first, this may feel unnatural because the old emotional patterns have been repeated for years. But repetition creates familiarity. The more often you return to feelings of confidence, gratitude, abundance, peace, and certainty, the more natural they begin to feel. Eventually, the new emotional identity becomes stronger than the old one. You also begin attracting different experiences because your expectations change. People who feel worthy naturally notice opportunities more easily. People who feel confident take action more boldly. People who feel hopeful remain persistent even during challenges. Internal feelings influence external behavior, and external behavior influences outcomes. The person you are becoming is shaped not only by what you think, but by what you consistently feel. Emotions are powerful because they breathe life into thought. A thought repeated with emotion becomes belief, and belief shapes reality. So stop waiting for the world to change before you change within. Stop postponing confidence, peace, joy, and self worth until some future moment. Begin feeling now what you desire to experience later. Become emotionally aligned with the life you want to create. Because the moment you truly feel like the version of yourself you wish to become, you begin moving toward that reality with a completely different energy. And eventually, Life starts responding to the person you have already become within. Most people spend years trying to change their outer circumstances while ignoring the inner world that created them. They try to force change through struggle, frustration, and constant effort without realizing that true transformation begins within. The outer world is often a reflection of the inner state of consciousness. Your thoughts, beliefs, assumptions, emotions, and self-image silently shape the experiences you attract and the actions you take. This is why lasting change always starts internally before it becomes visible externally. Many people believe their circumstances are fixed. They look at their current reality and assume it defines their future. If they experience financial problems, they begin identifying as poor. If relationships fail, they begin identifying as unworthy. If opportunities seem limited, they accept limitation as part of their identity. But circumstances are not permanent truths. They are often reflections of long held beliefs and emotional patterns. Once the inner state changes, the outer conditions eventually begin shifting as well. Think about how differently people respond to life based on their inner world. One person faces challenges with confidence, believing solutions will appear. Another person faces the same challenges with fear and hopelessness, expecting failure. The external situation may be similar, but the internal response changes everything. The person who feels empowered internally naturally sees possibilities, takes action, remains persistent, and moves through life differently. Inner transformation changes behavior, energy, perception, and expectation, all of which influence outer results. The problem is that many people are trapped in reactive living. They allow circumstances to control their emotions, thoughts, and identity. If something goes wrong, they immediately feel defeated. If delays happen, they assume failure is coming. If people reject them, they question their worth. In this state, the outer world constantly controls the inner world. But true power begins when you reverse this process and allow the inner world to lead instead of follow. When you transform internally, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You begin understanding that your inner assumptions hold creative power. Instead of constantly focusing on what is wrong, you start focusing on who you are becoming. Instead of emotionally reacting to limitations, you begin cultivating confidence, peace, gratitude, and belief within yourself. And gradually, life begins reflecting this transformation back to you. The outer world often changes slowly because physical reality tends to follow internal change with a delay. This is why many people give up too early. They may begin thinking positively for a few days, but when immediate results do not appear, they return to old habits of fear and doubt. But inner transformation requires persistence. You must remain loyal to the new identity even before evidence appears. The seed planted internally must be nurtured consistently before it becomes visible externally. Everything in your life is influenced by your internal state. Relationships improve when you stop carrying assumptions of rejection and insecurity. Opportunities appear differently when you begin expecting growth instead of failure. Financial situations can change when you stop identifying with lack and start developing a mindset of abundance and possibility. Even your health and emotional well-being are deeply connected to the thoughts and feelings you consistently entertain. Your subconscious mind plays a powerful role in shaping your outer experiences. Whatever beliefs are deeply impressed upon the subconscious influence your automatic behaviors, emotional reactions, and perceptions. If you subconsciously believe life is difficult, you may unconsciously create struggle through fear, hesitation, or negative expectation. But when you begin impressing thoughts of success, peace, confidence, and abundance upon the mind, your internal programming starts changing. Over time, your actions and experiences begin aligning with these new beliefs. Inner transformation also changes the way you carry yourself in the world. A person who feels confident internally walks differently, speaks differently, and reacts differently than someone trapped in insecurity. A person who feels worthy naturally attracts healthier experiences because they no longer settle for situations that reinforce limitation or disrespect. The world often responds to the energy and identity you consistently embody. One of the most important things you must understand is that forcing external change without inner change rarely creates lasting results. A person may temporarily improve their situation, but if their self-concept remains weak, fear and limitation eventually return. This is why true transformation is not just about getting different results. It is about becoming a different person internally. You must stop constantly checking the outer world for proof that change is happening. Transformation begins invisibly. The inner shift comes first. The new beliefs, emotions, and assumptions develop internally long before the physical world catches up. If you remain faithful to the new inner state, circumstances eventually begin rearranging themselves in unexpected ways. There is incredible power in deciding that your inner peace matters more than temporary appearances. When you stop allowing fear, doubt, and negativity to dominate your inner world, you begin gaining emotional freedom. You stop reacting to life from weakness and start responding from confidence and clarity. This alone changes the direction of your life. Every great transformation in life begins with a decision within. The decision to think differently. The decision to see yourself differently. The decision to stop identifying with limitation and start aligning with possibility. Once this inner shift becomes consistent, the outer world cannot remain the same forever. So do not underestimate the power of inner transformation. The person you become internally determines the reality you eventually experience externally. Change the inner world, and over time, the outer world will begin reflecting that change back to you. Because the greatest transformation in life is never just about changing circumstances. It is about changing consciousness itself. At the end of the day, your future is not being created by luck. It is being created by the thoughts you repeatedly accept as true about yourself. The story you tell yourself in silence eventually becomes the life you live in public. That is why you must guard your mind carefully and choose your inner words wisely. Stop calling yourself weak when there is strength within you. Stop calling yourself unlucky when new possibilities are waiting to unfold. Stop identifying with old pain, old failures, and old limitations. Those chapters are not your identity unless you continue carrying them forward. From this moment on, begin seeing yourself differently. Speak to yourself with power. Imagine greater things for your life. Walk as if your breakthrough is already unfolding. Think as the person you wish to become. Feel worthy now, not someday. Because when your inner story changes, your outer world has no choice but to follow. Always remember, a new life begins the moment a new identity is accepted. And the greatest thing you can ever do for yourself is to stop repeating the old story and finally become the author of a new one. Thank you all so much for listening and sharing this moment with me. I truly hope these words inspire you to see yourself differently and step into the powerful person you were always meant to become. Never underestimate the impact of your thoughts, your beliefs, and the story you tell yourself every single day. If this message touched your heart, carry it with you beyond today. Remind yourself daily that you are capable of transformation, worthy of greatness, and able to create a completely new reality for your life. Thank you once again, and may your new story begin today.